Chapter 2. Illusions and holograms danced through the air, one indistinguishable from the other. Vilstare pressed her lips together and ignored them all, running as fast as she could. Colored lights swirled in front of her, momentarily obstructing her vision. Fucking! Vilstare ran into the wall they had concealed. You're only making things worse for yourself? I disagree, officer. Globlan's voice came tinny through the hallway, but clear enough for her to hear his smug tone. Vilstare pushed off the wall, rubbing her sore nose. It was flat, which was the only thing that had saved it from being crushed or broken, but it still hurt. Once again, she blessed her mixed genetics. She continued down the hallway, forcing herself to move at a slower pace. The gray gods knew what the next set of holograms and illusions might disguise. Damn it, she needed a partner. She ignored the pain that shot through her at the memory of Rithim. His death wouldn't be in vain. A few more steps and she reached an intersection. Riotous colors showed in every direction, offering her no help. The colors combined with her green skin to make an awful color. Annoying music now played, all the awful songs that children of all species seemed to love. Vilstare tapped the jewel connected to her temple. A diagram of the building filtered over her vision, though even that wasn't enough to display all of Globlan's stupid tricks. An exit waited to the left. Right and straight would take her deeper into the building, through different sections. Damn it, Globlan could be anywhere in the building. She tapped her jewel again, switching to a heat sensor overlay. That didn't help. There were dozens of people inside the building, all wondering about what sort of criminal built his lair in a fun park. Without the amusement park, he wouldn't have access to the holograms. And the fun part was what brought all the Cyraci here. Fuck you, Vilstare told the ceiling, knowing Globlan would hear her through the speakers. Should you be using that sort of language, officer? You're gray. He knew she was coming. He couldn't stay here, not unless he wanted to get captured. There must be something he had planned, some way to escape. Local police surrounded the amusement park, checking everyone who left. Globlan had drugged the Cyraci into giving him these illusions. As long as they stayed psychotropic, the Cyraci couldn't concentrate enough to get him out. And as soon as they came down from their high, they'd turn on him. That was worse than getting captured by her or the local police. She headed straight. It seemed as good an option as any. As she jogged, she tugged her lower lip into her mouth. It stretched further than a human's would, though not as far as a Parleni's. Vilstare was a mix between the two. When she lifted her hand, the webbing between her fingers looked thicker than usual. Another illusion? Or just the colors and holograms making her look awful? Surely the Cyraci should concentrate on something else. She wasn't going to stop because of something as small as that. Other than that, she saw only distant holograms and illusions as she walked. Had Globlan lost track of her? Or maybe the Cyraci were beginning to sober up. She didn't care why, and broke into a sprint again. When she reached the next intersection, colors rained down on her, so fast and thick that she couldn't see anything through them. Vilstare pressed herself against the wall, swearing. Though she tapped her jewel many times, even that didn't help. It could penetrate the holograms, but not the illusions. Those bypassed her technology, sinking directly into her brain. Mind tricks weren't supposed to work as well against her, thanks to her mixed genetics. That was part of why Yafan sent her and Rithim here. Being an ill-gotten hadn't helped Rithim when the illusions made him walk into a turbine he couldn't see. Being ill-gotten didn't help Vilstare now. The Cyraci must have found a way around her unusual brain chemistry. Or maybe, when enough Cyraci were working together, brain composition didn't matter as much. Vilstare continued forward. She glared at the colors around her, resenting them. She wanted to rub her eyes, but she knew that wouldn't help. That might make the holograms disappear, but it would do nothing for the illusions. Those were in her mind. Maybe that wouldn't fix her problem, but would it hurt? Vilstare closed her eyes. Since she could barely see anyway, she might as well. To her surprise, all the colors dissipated, leaving only black. Didn't Psy-Ray affect the mind? Since it was an illusion, perhaps it affected the part of her mind that controlled what she saw. She still couldn't see, but now she was less annoyed. With one hand stretched out in front of her, she weighed it forward. Like this, she could only inch ahead. If she took so long that Globulin escaped, there was no point in doing this. She tapped her jewel. Though the jewel interfaced directly with her mind, it was meant to supplement her senses, not replace them. Though she could see a diagram of the building and her approximate location within it, that didn't help much. There was a wall somewhere ahead of her, and she couldn't tell how far. Knowing it was there made her walk all the slower. A few more taps of the jewel offered no assistance. If she had a jewel that included advanced navigational systems, she could have walked through the building blind. She didn't have that. Her superiors judged that heat sensors and infrared were enough. Those were already more than most people had on their jewels. Should have been born blind. She wouldn't have survived until birth in that case. She was ill-gotten. She'd been conceived and grown in a laboratory. Ill-gotten children with deficiencies were thrown out before they reached maturity. An echo came, distant. Vilstare stopped and tilted her head to the side. It came from the right. According to the diagram from her jewel, a large room waited in that direction, used for storage. With a mental shrug, she headed that way. After a few timid steps, her hand found the wall. This gave her the courage to walk faster, since she had some idea of where she was. Another tap of her jewel zoomed in on the diagram. She hadn't walked into that wall yet. That gave her a sense of the scale. Another noise came, closer this time. It wasn't Globulin, taunting her over the building's communication system. Speaking of, why hadn't he bothered her recently? He'd probably already fled the building, looking for a way to escape the fun park. Vilstare broke into a jog. The wall fell abruptly away as the overlay suggested she should have walked into a wall. When she waved her hand to the side, she smacked it against a door. She must be inside the storage room. Despite knowing she shouldn't, Vilstare opened her eyes. For the first time in far too long, she saw the world around her. A few lights blinked along the ceiling of the room, providing inadequate illumination. Crates lined one side of the room, broken equipment the other. Everything was covered in dust and cobwebs. It was smaller than it should be. Vilstare compared what she could see versus the diagram. The room should have been 4 times that size, not the cramped space she could see. Another illusion? A far more subtle one this time? With all those drugs in their bodies, could the Psy-Ray form something this detailed? Maybe it was a hologram. A noise came again, closer. It bounced off the ceiling, though it seemed to come from beyond the wall. Vilstare swung an arm at the closest crate. Her hand struck nothing but air. Hologram or illusion, it didn't matter. Crates and equipment weren't real. Vilstare strode forward, squeezing her eyes shut once more. It should have taken 1 step before she ran into something, but she kept going. 2, 3, 4 steps. On the 5th, her shin banged against something hard. Fucking hells! Vilstare opened her eyes again. The room looked different. The poor lighting was the same, as were the dusking cobwebs. There were crates and equipment off to the side, far away. The room finally looked the size it ought to be. More importantly, Vilstare could now see a dozen people sprawled on the floor in a loose circle, most of them children. They leaned against one another, muttering and laughing. It reminded Vilstare of that night she had during the academy, when she and some other recruits got into the good painkillers. The morning after had been a bitch, but the night itself had been brilliant. Thanks to the recording another recruit made, Vilstare had seen that same stupid, vacant look on her own face. Globulin had snatched 12 Psy-Ray during their vacation, 2 teachers and 10 children. This must be them. Vilstare crouched beside the nearest adult, a Huck-Fairing male with graying fur. She poked his shoulder to ensure that he was real. Her finger touched coarse fur, and Vilstare sighed. Then she gripped both sides of his shoulders and gave him a firm shaking. Whoa! The Huck Fairy blinked open his eyes. His whiskers twitched, and his sharp ears perked up. Hey, sister, you look awesome. Sober up. Vilstare smacked him across his long nose. His head snapped to the side. For a moment, he gaped, rubbing his cheek. Then he laughed and slid backward. Don't you dare! I need you coherent! She didn't know what Globulin had given them. Whatever it was still affecting the Cyraci. When she stared at the nearest child, she frowned. Both adults were giggling, but the children barely moved. Children required different doses of medicine than adults. Something that made an adult high could kill a child. She kept one hand gripping the Huck Fairy while she shoved the other hand deep into one of her jacket pockets. As a Grey operative, she carried a few painkillers at all times. Even injured, she was still expected to carry out her duty. Because the painkillers messed with the mind, she also had a sobriety pill. It had been tailored to her biology, which was unique. Well, Huck Fairy were among the more robust species in the galaxy. Hopefully it wouldn't kill him. Don't want it, the Huck Fairy said when she tried to shove the pill into his mouth. Tough shit. Vilstare gripped his face and jaw, pressed his mouth shut until he swallowed. Then she sat back and waited. The pill shouldn't take long. Within 30 seconds, the Huck Fairy began shaking. It started as little twitches, then grew into full body spasms. Vilstare thanked the Grey gods that she hadn't given the pill to one of the children. She shoved her arm under his head to act as a pillow so he wouldn't give himself a concussion. He muttered throughout, words Vilstare couldn't decipher. Suddenly he sat up, eyes wide. The shit? Welcome back to reality, where we all miss drugs. You need to stop the illusions, help your fellow Cyraci, and tell me where to find Globulin. For a moment, the Huck Fairy only stared at her. When his gaze fell to her jacket, his eyes narrowed. You're a Grey operative? Vilstare Billa of the Grey Interstellar Police. Excellent. Thank you for your help, Officer Billa. I'll take care of things here. You find Globulin. Where is he? The Huck Fairy's eyes went distant. He tapped the jewel at his temple, and a beep sounded from Vilstare's. Standing this close, they didn't need to know each other to share information. A location appeared before her eyes. A blinking red dot moved away from this building, heading towards the far side of the fun park. It moved slowly, so Globulin must be on foot. Thank you. The Huck Fairy nodded. Just get him. Kidnapping and drugging Cyraci is a galaxy-wide offense, especially when it involves children. Vilstare clapped him on the upper arm and hurried out of the room. She could see clearly now. Though wonderful, it took her a moment to adjust. Then she shook her head and broke into a sprint. As she ran, she tapped her jewel. This is where you can find the Cyraci, she told the local authority. The children need medical attention. Understood, officer. We're on our way. Do you know where Globulin is? I'm getting closer to his location. Vilstare didn't transmit his location. The Huck Fairy must have connected her to his jewel unless Cyraci had some other tracking method that could be connected to a jewel. Globulin was armed and dangerous, and Vilstare wanted to catch him herself. Head to the north side of the park. However angry she was, she wanted backup in case she needed it. Rifhim would have been her backup, but he was gone now. She ignored the pang in her chest. Now wasn't the time to mourn. She ran faster. With no holograms distracting or confusing her, and the diagram showing her the way, Vilstare quickly exited the building and turned north. When she entered the building less than an hour ago, plenty of people were still wandering around the amusement park. Now she saw only security. A man who captured and drugged Cyraci was capable of anything, so the local authorities had gotten civilians out of the way. None of the security stopped Vilstare, though two ran after her. They knew who she was and who she was chasing. She approached the blinking red light. Vilstare checked that her blaster was on stun mode. She wanted Globulin alive, so he could spend years making up for his crimes. When he died, he could then continue to pay. The concession house stood between her and Globulin. Vilstair slowed as she rounded it, not wanting to give her position away. She reached the edge and poked her head out, ready to fire. There was no one there. Frowning, she checked the tracker the Huck Fairing gave her. The blinking red light was right there. Globlen should be standing in front of her. What if the Huck Fairing had made a mistake? Or what if he was a liar on Globlen's side and trying to send her the wrong way? Damn it, she hadn't even thought of that. She reached for her jewel when the blinking red light grew smaller. How could it be smaller? From the speed, Globlen still wasn't in a ship. When she glanced around the area, she guessed. A manhole covered the entrance to the sewers. Of course. A stun shot from her blaster made the cover spring out of the hole, where it rolled to one side. A noise came from within, echoing oddly but sounding dismayed. Vilstair hoped Globlen was dismayed. She approached the hole from the side, keeping low and pointing her blaster inside. Thanks to the infrared on her jewel, she could see something large and hot moving around down there. It was about the size of most humanoids, and it was quickly moving away. Not quickly enough, though. Vilstair stunned it. The figure slumped to the side and didn't move. A quick scan showed nothing else alive in the vicinity, or at least nothing big and alive. Vilstair climbed down the ladder on the side. The rungs were slippery, but that didn't bother her. She could grip wet things more easily than most sentients, her webbed skin sticking to the rungs. When she neared the bottom, she scanned the area again. Still nothing but the person she stunned. The figure lay a few feet from the ladder, their face resting on the edge of a puddle. Vilstair used her foot to push the person over onto their back. In the dark of the sewers, she couldn't see, but her jewel could still scan the face and DNA. It was Globlen. Let's see how much you enjoy a lifetime in prison. Vilstair smirked even though he couldn't hear her. She'd gotten him, and that was what mattered. By the time Vilstair got Globlen's bulk up the ladder and out of the sewer, the local police had arrived. A drill-thin man and a trick-shorn man, both bulging with muscles, took Globlen from her, hoisting him up into the waiting police hover van. Vilstair shook hands with the local sheriff. "We'll transport the prisoner to Capitania," he said after thanking her. "Capitania?" She blinked. He spread his claws wide. His crime was against Cyraci. Where else can he be tried? Vilstair made a soft noise under her breath but didn't argue. She wanted him to stand trial on Duraci. He'd killed a Grey operative, but he'd also kidnapped Cyraci and threatened the lives of the children in the group. These Cyraci were unattached, and so crimes against them could only be tried on Capitania. She shouldn't complain. Whatever punishment Globlen got would be worse on Capitania than it would be on Duraci. Rithim would have to be satisfied with that. She copied her contact information to the sheriff so that he could, in turn, give that to the officials on Capitania. If they needed Vilstair present for the trial, they would call her. She doubted they'd need her. The word of a Cyraci would be more than enough to convince Globlen. "How are the Cyraci?" "They'll live. They're already heading back to Capitania. Some of the children need advanced medical attention." The sheriff shrugged. "I want to know what happens to them. Pass that on with my information." "Will do. Anything else you need, officer? The, remains of your partner?" Vilstair grimaced. There wasn't much left of Rithim. The Cyraci had made him walk into a turbine he hadn't realized was there. "I don't need to take them, him, home, but thank you." Before he could ask her for help in cleaning up, she left. One of the police hover vans flew her back to her ship when she had left near the amusement park entrance. She thanked the police for the lift and got into the nebula's edge. Once inside, she sighed and slumped into the pilot's chair. Great God, she hoped she never got another mission like this one. A tap of her jewel opened a comm channel to Grey HQ on Duraci. Yalfon answered, leaning close. "What happened?" he asked, ears pressed against the side of his head. He already knew about Rithim's death. Vilstair gave a short report of the last few hours. Yalfon made vague noises as he recorded her, then asked for a few details. It was all standard stuff, things Vilstair could do in her sleep. I didn't argue that Globland should be taken to Capitania, she said at the end. Nor should you. Yafan shook his head, his whiskers stiff with disapproval. Messing with Cyrasi. What in the hells was he thinking? Our representatives on Capitania will make sure he sees justice, Vilstair, don't worry. The Galactic Senate ensures that anyone who messes with unattached Cyrasi ends up regretting it. Rithim can be at peace. Yeah, about that. There isn't enough of him to bring home. Yafan coughed, his ears twitching violently. Great gods. I had wondered why you didn't mention the body. I'll contact his family. They'll want to make arrangements for a funeral. You don't have to be here for it. She'd never met Rithim's family. He hadn't been close to them, and she had only met him a few months ago. I'll be there, she said, because they deserved to hear the details from her. It was also a chance to say goodbye to Rithim, and she needed that. Do you want me to head back now? He checked something on a screen she couldn't see. No, stay there a little longer. The Cyrasi have left, but Globland hasn't been transported yet. I want you nearby in case he left us with more surprises. Keep in contact. He raised a paw in farewell, then cut the connection. So much for getting out of here. Vilstair slid lower in her seat, her knees banging against the console. Like most neutral worlds, the authorities on Walleran didn't move quickly. Neutrals loved paperwork and checking protocols and every other stupid little thing that took too long. After an hour, the sheriff called Vilstair to get her report. She copied him the official one she gave to Yafan, then, at the sheriff's request, sent a second copy to Capitania. After that, she had to wait some more. When another hour passed and she heard nothing new, she left the cockpit to head further back into her cruiser. Like most police operatives, she spent more time on her ship than any one planet. The Nebula's Edge had everything she needed to make it a home. 3 bunks folded out from the wall, one above the other. A couch sat in front of a large console, and the refresher was larger than most on cruisers. Vilstair grimaced when she opened Withem's locker. His clothes stared back at her, accusing. She found a box that she dumped them into, praying that Yafan would call with a mission. Anything was better than this. If she was already dreading the funeral, did that make her a horrible partner and friend? Probably, but it didn't change how she felt. When a ping came from her jewel an hour later, Vilstair sighed. Thank all the gray gods. She left the box half-packed as she walked into the cockpit, tapping her jewel. Yafan's image appeared on the display, even more haggard than before. Did something happen to the Cyrasi? No, we've got a crisis on Hrekken. Thieves hit a government building, killed at least 4 people. You're the only operative nearby. Can you take it? I know you've got... Yes, Vilstair said, hating herself. Yafan looked hopeful as she settled into her chair, pulling the restraints around her. Don't worry about it. I'll take point on this. When you get someone else, I can go home. That won't take more than a day or so, will it? The Nebula's Edge rose from the ground as she hit buttons. That should be more than enough time for someone else to take over. Thanks, Vilstair. No problem. I'll call you when I get there. She hung up, then connected with the local authorities to explain why she had to leave. They didn't like it, but they assured her that they would transport Globland to Capitania. Vilstair thanked them for their understanding. By the time the conversation had ended, the Nebula's Edge was far away from Walleran, perpendicular to the orbits of most of the planets. Far enough away to safely make the jump into hyperspace. Vilstair checked the computer had the correct coordinates for Hrekken, then pulled the lever. The stars changed from pinpoints into lines as she left real space. For the next 4 hours, which is how long it would take to reach Hrekken, she couldn't communicate with anyone, which meant she wouldn't have to explain Rithim's death to his family yet. She was definitely a coward. For the moment, she didn't care.